The Divine Arcana. Written by anonymous author. 18th century. We wish to teach you in our present writings the true path of wisdom, which has been transmitted to us through God's kindness, to elaborate, from the three universal realms, the stone of all sages, blessed for all eternity. Introduction. Adam, the first man, was a divine universal being, from whom descended the children of his son Seth. They possessed these sciences and erected two columns, one safeguarded from water and the other from fire. However, when the deluge struck Syria and Chaldea, and later, through Abram, reached Egypt and then Greece, these columns fell into total ruin. There was such a universal disaster and desolation in nature that nothing remained except the clarity of the sun with its golden rays, which God's mercy saw fit to preserve for us. O almighty divine power! O mystery of creation! Eternal and unfathomable light, enlighten us with your Spirit so that we may walk in the ways of your will and transmit, as much as possible, to those among humankind who are worthy, the great mysteries you have entrusted to us, to bring praise and glory to you alone for all eternity. Know then, O man who has been deemed worthy to attain the knowledge of our present writings, that this is the divine work and the most sublime mystery that we reveal to you, by which great miracles may be performed. If it were not contrary to the majesty of stopping the sun for merely 24 hours, as in the time of Joshua, entire mountains could be set ablaze. We have limited ourselves to undertaking, governing, and wisely employing our universal work to the glory of the great Jehovah. In transmitting to you the works of the three realms, we place upon your conscience the duty not to reveal them to the profane, for they constitute the most sublime treasure, the foundation and essence of all wisdom, a relief for all the poor, a spirit that heals all diseases, a savior of all prisoners, a conqueror of all things, possessing all divine holiness, whose principle is drawn from eternity itself and remains eternally unchanging with Adonai. First part. Through the use of our machine, we demonstrate the process for creating the spirit of Mercury, which can never be brought to its first ends without it, and of our fire of nature, from which it alone derives its principle, as does everything in the world. Take, therefore, for this spirit of Mercury, common mercury, and place it in a cucurbite. Attach a receiver to it. Begin by applying the first degree of distillation with our fire of nature. Gradually increase the heat, degree by degree. When the mercury is activated by its own internal warmth, it will set itself into motion, rise into the head of the vessel in the form of a mist, and from there pass into the receiver, where it will condense into a spiritual water or viscous liquid, becoming visible. This is thus a dissolving menstruum, though not a universal one, possessing the power and strength to reduce all metallic bodies to their first matter, that is, to their natural essence, and to transform the corporeal into the spiritual, a process that we transmit to the artist for further use. From this sublimation of mercury, there is nothing else to do but place it in an open glass capsule and gently evaporate it using our magical fire of nature, coagulating it into a metallic salt. Then, apply full heat to fuse it into a glass, which we call our vitrified philosophical stone, with which great things can be accomplished. But how can this operation be performed both for health and for the sustenance of life? I outline here only one method. Namely, take 1 part of our vitrified philosophical stone and 10 parts of fine silver. Melt them together before our machine using our fire of nature. You will obtain a white, brittle substance that can be easily reduced to powder. Take 1 part of this powder and mix it with 1,000 parts of common mercury. Place them in an open capsule or in a cavity proportionally made in a tile stone. Melt everything together before our machine using our secret fire of nature. Maintain the fusion until the mercury ceases to emit fumes. At that moment, you will have solidified it into fine silver. However, since this silver will be too compact and equal in weight to gold, you must melt it again with an alloy of 2 ounces of copper. The sulfur and the copper will open its pores, and you will then have very fine silver. But if you combine fine gold with our vitrified philosophical stone, following the same process with our fire as described above, your benefit will be even greater, as you will obtain gold instead of silver. As for medicine, this stone should not yet be used in treating illnesses, as it remains too far from the purity required. Second part of the Mineral Kingdom. This chapter explains how to extract the best essence from all ores through the use of our magical fire of nature, whether from ores of gold, silver, iron, copper, Venus, mercury, tin, or lead, or from auriferous, copper-bearing, and sulfurous pyrites, or from ores of bismuth, arsenic, antimony, cobalt, marcasite, garnet stones, yellow ochre, brown flint, calamine, all kinds of talc, vitriol, and finally all imperfect metals and ores. To operate using our machine, the principal rule is as follows. Take any mineral of your choice. Weigh it and record its weight. Use it in its raw state, just as it comes from the mines. Simply wash it of its impurities as thoroughly as possible, then dry it and grind it finely into seblik, fine powder. Spread it over a marble plate, but not too thickly. Apply our magical fire to it, calcining it while continuously stirring the material with a glass or wooden rod to ensure the fire permeates it evenly. Once complete, weigh the calcined material. You will notice an increase in weight, which has become fixed without the addition of any external substance, and you will have obtained the purest and most stable metal. At this point, the operation is complete. Refining metals to their highest degree of purity. Furthermore, we shall now teach you how to refine all metals using our magical fire, bringing them to their highest level of purity. Namely, take a very fine cupel, ensuring that it is of the highest quality. Without this, it will not be possible to cupel successfully with our fire, as ordinary cupels will not withstand the process. The spirit of the world penetrates them abundantly, causing them to crack and thus hindering your operation. Place your molten metal into the cupel. Apply our magical fire. Gradually and progressively project into it our philosophical Saturn, that is, niter, salpeter, which is the master of all metals in purifying them. Maintain our fire properly, and all impurities will be expelled as smoke, leaving the metal fixed and pure. The result will be a brilliance and splendor far superior to anything obtained through ordinary cupellation with common fire, and its purity will be of an unparalleled degree. Now let us follow the path of the mineral kingdom and set aside the spirit, balance, of mercury previously discussed. For the transmutation and enhancement of imperfect metals, we shall select an ordinary mineral, one that has not yet become metal but nonetheless contains within it a seed and a metallic sulfur. By this, we mean minerals that contain a sulfur of mercury or, better yet, a sulfur of gold. Choose such a mineral. Pulverize it and remove all impurities using water. Then, calcine it with our fire of nature. During this process, you will witness with astonishment how the spirit of the world magnetically permeates, fixes itself, and metallizes within the substance. Once this is complete, add fine gold to the said sulfur of gold, for gold is its natural body. Melt them together and unite them through our fire of nature. Maintain the fusion until it presents the cat's eye glow, red as fire, uniform like a sphere or round stone that remains motionless. At this point, your work is complete, and you now possess a treasure that ensures you will lack nothing, whether for health or for fortune. This is our mineral philosophical stone, which appears as a carbuncle of the highest purity and beauty, reflecting all the most splendid colors of the world. A single portion of this precious stone, when combined with 100 parts of fine gold and melted together before and through our fire of nature, gains an increase in the fusion by the magnetic attraction of the spirit of the world. In the end, it transforms into a perfect powder and tincture. When even a tiny fraction of this tincture is projected onto 1,000 parts, or even more, of other imperfect metals, it converts them into the finest gold. Of the universality. To attain the knowledge of the universal, it is essential that a person possesses a pure and upright soul, with their spirit inclined more towards divine matters than worldly affairs. The Eternal grants them what they implore, and the doors of wisdom shall be opened to them. Let us begin, therefore, under the auspices of the Holy Trinity, to indicate and prove that our universal matter emanates from God, from all eternity, that it is the principle of all creatures, and that it is nothing other than the eternal breath of God and His Spirit residing within the elements, according to God's order. If you come to know this universal spirit and can procure it in the required quantity through our magical fire of nature to transform the spiritual into the corporeal, you will master the universal and the stone of all the sages. For this, you must give thanks to God alone from the depths of your soul, for He has deemed you worthy to attain such sublime and celestial knowledge. Everything exists in God. Everything emanates from God. By imploring His goodness, He grants us, through His Holy Spirit, the true wisdom that instructs us in all things. Consider the universal spirit of the world and observe whether, according to the creation and immutable order of God, all creatures derive their life and sustenance from Him, and that without Him, nothing could exist. As soon as this spirit departs from man and all living beings, a natural reduction occurs, causing all to return to their primitive element, that is, to materiam ultimum, and they become what they were before their birth. Know that this work of nature is none other than the universal spirit of the world, which insidiously permeates all men and living beings, though invisibly. It becomes visible and corporeal when it joins with the element of earth, coagulating into a nitrous salt, which is destined for the generation, growth, and preservation of all things. Therefore, be a scrutator and an attentive observer of nature's workings and a true mage. Above all, ensure that you arrange your work so that it derives from nature and the unique seed that God has imbued in each thing. That is to say, if you wish to create metals, improve them, or elevate them to a higher standard than they currently possess, it is necessary to resort to a metallic seed, which is none other than our philosophical Mercury, that is, the spirit of the world. To procure this, observe that there is nothing in the world that does not have its analogous magnet, its sympathy, and its antipathy. In this way, common nitre acts as a magnet to attract a great quantity of the spirit of the world, as its own blood, from which it has derived its principle, becoming visible to us. This must be done as follows. Take well crystallized common nitre. Mix it with quicklime. Heat them together well in a well-sealed crucible until they glow red. Then, crush this mass. Wash it with hot water. Filter, and evaporate it until it is reduced by half, then allow it to crystallize. Take these crystals and mix them again with quicklime. Repeat this process 3 or 4 times. Afterward, melt these crystals in a very clean crucible in front of our machine using the fire of nature. They will become so fiery and magnetic that if you then place them in wide capsules or other suitable vessels under our machine on a clear sunny day and apply the 3rd degree of our fire, you will obtain, within an hour, more than 2 pints of the purest, most blessed dew of heaven, or the spirit of the world. As soon as you have gathered this spirit, store it in a well-stopped bottle separately. Also, keep your magnetic crystals in a glass container and preserve them carefully for our upcoming use. After completing this process, we take this pure and celestial blue spirit of the world and gently apply the distillatory rays of our astral magical fire in front of our machine. We continue this until it is entirely coagulated into celestial blue salt. Upon reaching this point, we then apply the full heat of our fire and maintain it until this salt is completely reduced into a glass-like substance or a perfectly round stone that remains motionless, displaying the most beautiful celestial colors at the highest degree, which can be achieved in 2 or 3 hours. Thus, with God's help, you will have completed the most sublime work, possessing the universal and the philosopher's stone, along with the ability to prolong or shorten your life, to be eternally happy or unhappy, depending on whether you make good or bad use of this divine gift. Always look forward and not backward if you wish to contemplate and penetrate the wonders of your Creator, who, by His great goodness, has infused everything within you in the sublime mystery of the philosopher's stone. In this stone, you see, day and night, for all eternity, the course of the sun and the moon along with the revolutions of the planets and stars, the entire trajectory of the firmament, very distinctly, albeit in very small figures. You observe how each and every one fulfills the order of movement prescribed to them. The microcosm similarly presents itself within this stone. It generally contains everything within it, except that in its quality as a fixed constellation in nature, it will not satisfy your desire for gold unless you take a part of this blessed stone for every 1,000 parts of fine gold, which is its ferment, and melt them together in front of our machine. With the addition of solar sulfur, the entire mass will melt again into a glass full of fire and red like a ruby, which will be very brittle and can easily be crushed into the finest red powder. This will be what delights and satisfies you, for by projecting a part of this powder onto 1,000 parts of imperfect metals, in fusion before and through our fire of nature, it dyes and transmutes everything into the finest gold, withstanding all tests. Here, we must urge you to give thanks and glory to God from the depths of your soul for such a sublime blessing that His goodness has graciously bestowed upon you. If you neglect this advice, beware that you will not enjoy it for long. Now, we will describe what the philosopher's stone is, its virtues, and the powers it contains, which it allows us to partake in, as well as how to use it and preserve it in its purity. The philosopher's stone is primarily a sublime gift and grace from God. In it, one can see not only all the wonders of God but also scrutinize and penetrate all the treasures and mysteries of this divine work. It also grants the faculties to better know oneself. It provides wealth, honor, love, and friendship to man. It protects the bearer from all misfortunes. It infuses all wisdom, strengthens memory, pacifies all enmity, heals all kinds of ailments, rejuvenates a person, and prolongs life for several hundred years, if it is God's will, when fervently invoking His goodness from the depths of the soul. Ultimately, this blessed stone restores all human infirmities and ailments. If a person takes only half a grain of it per year in wine and sweats well after consuming it, they will find themselves rejuvenated. New teeth and nails will grow on their hands and feet. Gray hair will fall out and be replaced by new growth. The outer skin of the old person will disappear, replaced by a renewed one. Thus, a person will be like a newborn, like a youth. This is how we conclude this article to the glory of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Another universal work. We wish to convey to you another universal work that similarly derives from our universal base and root. We present it briefly and clearly. To know. Our universal matter is none other than the pure solar spirit of the world, which, when mechanically coagulated into a body and rendered visible, which is important to observe, becomes a nitre called the dragon of the philosophers. It presents itself with an exterior of beautiful white, but within it is a dragon of pure solar fire that, when turned, produces the most beautiful red in its nature, that is to say, it transforms an invisible body into a visible one, and a visible body into an invisible one, fixed permanently in the fire. And you will obtain a universal tincture, of which one part transmutes 1,000 parts of imperfect metals into the finest gold. All this must be done before our machine and nature's fire and can be completed in 2 or 3 hours. Having previously addressed the mineral kingdom, and since it simultaneously pertains to this realm, we will describe here the object of all precious and imperfect stones, as well as everything that grows in water, such as pearls, crystals, shells, and other kinds. We will outline an example of how they can be brought to a higher perfection before our machine using our magical fire of nature. The resulting benefits are immense, not only in terms of worldly wealth but also in the preservation of a health without infirmity and in the prolongation of life. Thus, one can end their days within the time frame prescribed by divine providence and almost return their spirit to God, from whom it has emanated. As it is undeniable that through fear and love for God we can triumph over everything, likewise, through His grace and our magical fire of nature, with the application of our machine, you can conquer all and reproduce everything in the most perfect and highest perfection, which would be impossible without the use of our fire of nature. We challenge anyone to say if they have ever seen or heard that talc, pearls, and especially plumosum alum can be melted without addition by material fire, no matter how intense it may be. No one will boast of being able to do this unless they know the use of our fire of nature, as we will prove and demonstrate below. As compelling evidence, we take only half an ounce of Eastern pearls, we place them in a very clean dish before our universal machine, so that our astral fire of nature touches them at the center and can embrace them. One can then witness the wonders of God, as they calcine instantly and then melt like celestial water, the sign of Aquarius, increasing in weight by a few grains due to the attraction and impregnation of the spirit of the world, becoming more precious by acquiring a greater degree of vitrified fixity than they had before. Know that this should not be viewed as mere experiments because the pearls have been taken out of their nature and transmuted by our magical fire of nature into a vitrified stone of eternal fixity and incomparable brilliance, celestial and infinitely radiant in colors. Observation and natural demonstration of the reasons why these things can be carried by us into a high and invaluable transmutation, and this per se, and se solo. Know therefore that all corporeal things which we calcine and then melt before our machine attract and become impregnated with the pure spirit of the world. It is understood that each thing of nature attracts its like. This spirit of the world infuses into them and appropriates these great beauties and virtues by fixing itself within them and becoming corporeal with them, thereby demonstrating the most complete proof of nature. Consider these great wonders of God, the magnitude of His goodness and mercy toward us poor humans, having arranged everything in nature for our benefit, so that we may employ it and make a holy use of it to His praise and glory, ultimately to enjoy and attain eternal beatitude. I pray, consequently, that anyone who is deemed worthy to attain the knowledge of these holy mysteries will be a faithful guardian of them, as we have previously observed. Know that it is this stone that provides eternal life, if it is God's will. It is this stone that grants all riches and heals all human diseases and infirmities. It is the one that rejuvenates man, protects him from all, and has the power to resurrect the dead. It is this stone whose use inspires us with all wisdom and all the secrets of the entire nature. Let us give thanks for the mercy and goodness of God, and never cease to sing His praises. Finally, we therefore transmit to you here the use of this blessed stone. Know this. Take, invoking the most holy blessing of God, 1 part of the said stone and 10 parts of fine oriental stones, which are its ferment. Put everything together in fusion before our machine by our fire of nature. You will obtain an invaluable tincture full of all the most beautiful colors. Thus, 1 part on 1,000 parts of unripe pearls, mother of pearls, etc., transmutes them into the finest pearls in the world that you can shape into prepared forms, making them large or small, at your choice. But by giving fine diamonds as a ferment to our aforementioned stone, and by putting them together in fusion by our fire of nature, you will obtain a tincture for all crystals, stones, glasses, etc., provided they have been well purified beforehand. As for health, this stone operates only to protect the one who carries it from all infected air and from all pestilential diseases. Arcanum Arcanorum, or Secret Instructions of the Mineral Kingdom. On Lumen Plumosum. Incombustible to ordinary fire. Calcine, then fuse, the Lumen Plumosum by our secret fire, yet visible to all. Take the Lumen Plumosum in its raw state, just as it comes from the mines. By proceeding in the manner described above regarding the pearls, you will obtain a precious and beautiful stone that surpasses a ruby in its sparkling brilliance, infused with the fire of nature that has been impregnated in it. For Lumen Plumosum contains the most stable fire and the true quintessence of the fire of nature, which is then manifested and exalted by the application of our magical fire of nature, proceeding as follows. Take 1 part of this stone to 10 parts of fine diamonds. Grind these 2 materials into powder. Melt them together using our fire of nature. The diamond will receive the property of the fixed nature of this stone and will also be magnetically enhanced by our fire of nature from the sun and its always living rays, whose fire will eternally present itself in this living and sparkling stone, always giving a brilliance so bright that nothing in the world can compare to its beauty. The natural ruby is but pale and lifeless when compared to that of our celestial ruby, which is fixed and full of fire. The fire of the former is weak and dissipates. It remains always motionless, and unless it is turned and stirred, it will shine very little. Ours greatly surpasses the aforementioned stone of pearls, when used for the transmutation of other stones, after first giving it a ferment from another stone, as you see fit. It is a universal tincture for base stones and crystals. On talc to make talc oil. Our true talc oil, as well as any other oil that one might wish to derive from metals, minerals, pearls, or precious stones, cannot and must not be produced by any other art than in front of our machine, by our fire, which must be governed as follows. Take common talc. Place it on a glass capsule, as we have previously discussed. Expose it to our machine to give it a calcining fire. Calcine until it turns into a blue powder and no longer fumes. Then gradually remove the calcined material from our machine, ensuring that for 2 hours, the fire is only a fire of digestion. You will be surprised to see how abundantly this calcined earth, enriched by its own spirit, attracts the universal spirit of the world and how this spirit dissolves it into an oil and flesh-colored spirit. By the same manipulation and process, one can reduce all metals, minerals, and stones into oil. Observe that the more a mineral has been calcined and opened by our magical fire of nature, the more it attracts the universal spirit of the world and dissolves with it into spirit and oil. This solution then coagulates when subjected to our stronger fire and becomes fixed to the highest degree, both for use in health and for producing precious stones. Let us pay homage to God, who, by His great goodness, fills us with so many sublime blessings. His name be praised. From the vegetable kingdom. Let us currently decompose the plants before our machine with our magical fire of nature and prove that without it, nothing essentially good and useful would be produced. We see with compassion and pain thousands of men laboring unnecessarily at great expense with their so-called wonderful decomposition of plants and everything that depends on it, using material fire to digest, calcine, distill, and cook in every way, yet they never obtain the true ends that we achieve with and by our fire, very naturally, very easily, in a short time, and even in just a few hours. For our fire generates, preserves, nourishes, and brings everything to maturity, whereas material fire diminishes, burns, destroys, and consumes everything. Conclude from this difference that nothing of value can result from the use of material fire, or at most very little good, while our nourishing fire demonstrates in thousands of ways what we claim. Now let us talk about how to obtain the only true essence of plants, taking wheat grain as an example. Let us observe that there are 2 tinctures to be extracted from plants, one for enhancement and the other for health. Let us begin by rightly giving preference to the tincture intended for enhancement. Know this. Take very pure niter in powder. Spread it on a glass plate. Calcine it slowly and gently in our nourishing fire until it no longer smokes and the niter has turned a reddish yellow. Then, artfully remove the matter from the fire so that it retains only the degree of digestion. In this state, it attracts the spirit of the world, much to your amazement, in such great abundance that one can gather several pints of this blessed spirit of the world in a very short time, even in just a few hours. Make sure to understand the importance of what we are telling you. Reflect on it well, and if you do not want or cannot comprehend us, then take it as certain that God has not destined you for this great work. We need not add anything more to the clarity with which we speak to assure you that this single thing, in which all mysteries are impregnated, is, in a word, the foundation of all philosophical work. The spirit of the world gathered, as mentioned above, must then be brought closer under our magical fire so that it successively reduces through cooking into a red or yellow powder. If we were to say just 3 more words here, you would have the philosopher's stone before your eyes and would have already prepared the tincture from the plants. Finally, by throwing a very small portion of the aforementioned powder into a large amount of fresh water, it will immediately start to effervesce. One throws away the foam that forms during the effervescence and sprinkles the grains of wheat, or any other seeds, with this tincture water. They are then sown. You will obtain an infinitely abundant harvest, and the seeds will grow to a size unparalleled in experience. As for the enhancement and multiplication of plants, trees, etc., one must sprinkle the roots with this tincture water. For medicine. No one should be ignorant, unless they are the most ignorant person on earth, that all things have been created by the Creator for the good of man. Therefore, we present an example of how to treat plants using our natural fire for medicinal purposes. Although all distillation can be performed in front of our machine, using our natural fire, and one obtains a clear and pure spirit through the alembic, which is undoubtedly 1,000 times better than what apothecaries produce with material fire, you must understand that everything distilled per descensum is infinitely better and preferable to anything distilled by the alembic. We will thus indicate how to use our machine and natural fire to act per descensum so that you can obtain both the spirit and the oil simultaneously. You should consider this a great secret. Therefore, fill a cucurbit with rose leaves or other flowers, ensuring they are very full and clean. Seal it tightly at the top. Attach a receiver to the bottom of the cucurbit. Place it on a ring applied to a wooden stick in front of our machine, and gently apply our fire. This will push the spirit downward and then the oil. A single drop of this spirit and oil has a better effect than 1,000 from common distillations. Dyeing of flowers or plants. We are passing on to you a greater secret than the previous distillations. This is for making the dyes of all flowers or plants. If you wish to create a dye for the enhancement or multiplication of all herbs, take the spirit and oil you have obtained per descensum and place them in a capsule or other suitable glass. Apply the rays of our magical fire to them. You will see with great joy that the spirit and the oil, through the attraction of the spirit of the world, will eventually reduce, through cooking, to a very fine and beautiful powder of the color of the flower, which is a very secret dye. Take 1 grain of this powder and mix it with 2 pints of fresh water, and it will be dyed into the best rose water or colored water of the flower used. Of wine. Having covered the vegetable kingdom so far, we now turn to the principal and universal work, which is the noble wine, or the blood of grapes. We will indicate the composition of the dye and its great utility. Just as it is possible for a man to produce and carry with him 200 barrels of wine, or even more. Choose the best wine, one that is good for health and pleasant to the taste. Fill a capsule with it. Adjust our machine so that the rays of our natural fire always embrace the wine. It will begin to boil. Do not let it boil too vigorously, rather, allow it to simmer gently to reduce it gradually by cooking to half, pouring in more wine as needed, until you have reduced it to dryness, about 3 to 4 marks, which is equivalent to 6 to 8 pints of France, or even more. Then, increase the fire. Hold the reduced substance over the fire for another hour, it will increase by 1/3. Remove the machine and allow it to cool. You will have obtained a stone that transmutes water into wine. But to elevate this dye to a much higher level, we melt this tincture in an open glass capsule before our machine using our natural fire, but with a very gentle heat to allow it to flow into a liquid. To ensure that this operation is carried out promptly, we first calcine the stone with our fire, then grind it into powder. This way, the attraction of the universal spirit becomes more abundant and penetrates more effectively, making the dye much more fluid, so that even the slightest heat from the sun will dissolve it into an infinitely precious liquid. Then, bring this liquid closer to our magical fire to reduce it again by cooking into a stone. This dye will then tint 10 times more than the previous one. Thus, this dye can be infinitely increased to transmute water into wine. The more often this manipulation is repeated, the richer the increase becomes. Let us give glory, praise, and thanks to God alone for all eternity. Of the animal kingdom. Now let us turn to the animal kingdom and explore the great wonders it contains to prove and convey to you an infinite number of possibilities contained in nature, as much as God allows us to reveal to you. But we earnestly urge you to remain silent. Cursed be 1,000 times he who dares to abuse these sublime gifts of God by employing them for wickedness and diabolical works. Woe to him who would venture to transmit these divine secrets to evildoers or to those who would not be worthy of them. We impose anathema and curse 1,000 times those who, having arrived at the knowledge of our present writings and holy wisdom, would use them otherwise than for the glory of God. We also curse those who would truncate or falsify our present writings. Be assured that by not conforming to these injunctions, this curse will strike you without the possibility of escape. For the objects in question touch too closely on the divine majesty and influence his omnipotence. Therefore, undertake nothing without first imploring the goodness and grace of the Supreme Being, and then you will succeed in all these holy mysteries. Know above all, you who wish to undertake something in the animal kingdom, that there will be very little that is useful to operate for humanity. We will present you with an example and ask what use it could serve to enclose the sperm of an animal in a hermetically sealed philosophical vessel and expose it to our natural fire for a very short time. It would serve no purpose other than to result in a monster, or a creature called a homunculus, which will present itself in a very small form. This monster is merely a creature against nature, against the order of God's will. It is also from this that the devil incarnates in these cursed creatures, serving man for a short time in order to ensnare him in his traps. For these reasons, we do not allow ourselves to elaborate further on many homunculi, but we will focus on things that are useful and permitted by the Supreme Being. Nature keeps its time in everything and in the course prescribed to it by the Creator. But His goodness has indeed allowed us to shorten the time of production with the help of the art He has revealed to us, making it more perfect. If you take many chicken, duck, goose, or other poultry eggs and place them in a box with wool or hemp, positioning them under our magical natural fire at a suitable distance to avoid igniting the box or the nest, you will accomplish in 3 or 4 hours what nature could not achieve in 4 weeks. One can also produce marvelous things with human excrement, blood, flesh, bones, horns, etc. It would be possible to perform great and very secret operations using our natural fire, and even to have predictions through the appearances of the dead, if one were not to fear attracting the rightful punishment of heaven. Thus, we prefer to limit ourselves to this point. On Electra and characters. Let us explore whether it is possible to produce extraordinary things through characters, etc. No one can boast of being able to represent the wonders of the world through characters, signs, or Electra if they do not first have a perfect understanding of how to prepare an electrum through our magical natural fire at the hours and times of the planet assigned to each metal. For this purpose, we will indicate the composition of a magical mirror. Magical mirror. First, choose the right time, then take the 7 noble metals, well purified, in equal weights. Place each separately into a large and sturdy crucible in front of our magical fire of nature, at the hours and times that are appropriate and assigned to each metal. For example, melt the gold on a Sunday at the hour when the sun is the ruling planet, then silver on Monday at the hour when the moon is ruling, iron on Tuesday, Mercury on Wednesday, Jupiter, tin, on Thursday, Venus, copper, on Friday, and Saturn, lead, on Saturday, always using our magical fire of nature. Once these fusions are complete, you will find that each metal has increased in weight, which serves as a complete proof that the superior has mingled with the inferior and has infused its qualities, along with all the virtues it possesses. Thus, all the electrum, signs, and other melted substances will receive their virtues and almost supernatural effects from this process. The 7 prepared metals should then be melted together into a single mass on a Sunday, at the hour of the sun, in ora solis. Pour the fusion into a mold shaped like a mirror, which you will then polish very cleanly, just like any other metal mirror. After polishing the mirror and making it pure and clear, observe the time when the sun is in the sign of Leo, typically during the months of July and August, with clear sunny days, especially on a Sunday. Then expose the mirror several times to the sun between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., ensuring that the unpolished part is always facing the sun, while the polished side of the mirror rests on a board that you have covered with a beautiful clean white cloth. Here you will be surprised by the wonders and the correspondence and magnetic virtue found in this mirror and our electrum prepared with the stars, planets, and all the regions above. You will see wonderful colors it attracts to itself, clearly and naturally representing all celestial and terrestrial things, almost as if they were alive. Good fortune and misfortune, life and death, and almost everything you desire to know can be seen this way. This is how all seals, characters, etc., are prepared. Additionally, you can melt a small, marvelous bell made of our electrum, which, when worn on your person, will begin to ring as you pass over a hidden treasure, thereby revealing its location. This bell also performs many other things, even miraculous ones. It makes good and evil spirits appear and compels them to obey you in all matters. This little bell is capable of many other great things, but we cannot reveal them, and we keep these sublime mysteries sealed under the wisdom's protection. We reiterate that the metals must be melted separately in front of our machine using our fire of nature at the time and hour ruled by the planet of each metal, for without this scrupulous observation, all the work would be in vain and a folly. Thus, we conclude this sublime mystery that we have received from God through our fervent prayers, so that after this life, our spirit may return to God from whom it originated at the beginning and enjoy eternal bliss in Him. Fundamental rule for making our machine. Our heated glass vessels must be made from the purest and finest materials, and they should be polished to a superior degree. The larger these vessels are, the greater their power will be to operate more swiftly and effectively to complete an operation. However, their size will suffice for all the works previously detailed when the main vessel has a diameter of 24 inches and a center diameter of 3 inches, while the collecting vessel has a diameter of 12 inches and a center diameter of 2 1/3 inches. For the excessive strength of the fire, even if it comes from nature, can harm and surpass the lesser genres that could not be perfected, as we can observe when a summer is excessively hot and dry. Therefore, each operation must be directed according to its nature and by the degree of fire it requires. If you need to provide fusion heat, the entire hearth must impact the exposed material. If you want to apply calcination heat, digestion heat, or distillation heat, you should adjust the exposed machine by a few degrees, as we indicated in the drawing of the machine, according to what is necessary, either backward or forward, which practice will easily teach you. Particular instructions. Out of love for God and for the benefit of the poor, we will provide some particulars to support their sustenance, so that the mercy and omnipotence of the Supreme Being may be increasingly recognized, and that thanks be given to Him alone for all the blessings with which He has filled us. Take fine gold, as much as your means allow. Place it on a smooth stone that can withstand the fire in front of our machine. Calcine it with a little finely crushed gravel until everything turns red and the gravel no longer gives off smoke. Then, gradually increase the fire and, in the end, give the entire hearth heat. Everything will melt together and vitrify into red glass like a ruby and increase in weight. Then weigh this solar glass. Add 10 times its weight of fine gold. Melt it all together on a small flat crucible. You will obtain a very brittle scarlet powder. A grain of this powder projected onto 100 grains or even more of lunar, silver, will tint them all into the finest gold. This entire operation is completed in 2 or 3 hours in front of our machine with our magical fire of nature. Another more important instruction. Take ammonium salt. Calcine it and remove all moisture. Mix it with a little dry potter's clay. Form small balls about the size of peas. Dry them, and then subject them per descensum in front of our machine with our fire of nature. You will then have prepared your menstruum for extraction. If you then pour this menstruum onto gold calcined with gravel, as mentioned above, it will immediately extract its sulfur. Then distill the menstruum. The solar sulfur or anima solis will remain at the bottom of the glass. This solar sulfur dissolves with the slightest heat from the sun that we can give it in front of our machine, turning into a dark red oil. Then, this oil, when coagulated and solidified by a stronger degree of our fire of nature, yields a tincture of which 1 part will transmute more than 1,000 parts of lunar, silver, into gold. Another instruction. Melt together silver and copper in front of our machine with the fire of nature. Project a little common sulfur into it, and continue to do so until the mass appears to resemble a completely red slag. In this operation, the copper along with its sulfur will solidify the cold lunar female, and it will enter with her into the fixed solar house of honor. The same method can be applied to all other metals. We do not want to linger here any longer. We prefer to focus on what can benefit health by indicating how to prepare the precious potable gold. Potable gold. Melt 6 parts of fine gold in front of our machine with our fire of nature. Once the melting is done, pull the gold slightly back and apply a calcining fire. Project a little common sulfur. Gradually and successively powder the 10 parts of gold. Continuously stir with a glass rod. The gold will open up, swell, rise, and become completely porous. Continue calcining until everything has turned a bright scarlet and can be ground into a very fine powder. Put this powder in good wine or wine spirit, and it will dissolve immediately. It colors the wine a beautiful red and makes it thus potable. But if you want to render this gold corporeal again, expose it in a glass capsule in front of our fire of nature to reduce it through cooking. You will then obtain the body in the form of a gold sulfur that dissolves very slowly into a gold oil. By coagulating this oil, you will have a particular tincture that can dye more than 1,000 parts of silver into gold. All metals can be made potable in the same way, and what is remarkable about this operation is that each material increases and improves under our fire of nature by the blessed spirit of the world. Note that during calcination, sulfur opens the pores of the metals, making them very fluid and ready to dissolve in wine spirit or wine, thus rendering them potable. All minerals, corals, agate stones, etc., can be reduced to liquid by our philosophical calcination. Fixation and coagulation of quicksilver, wine spirit, and other spirits. In light of what we have said above, we remember that we must also instruct you on how to fix and coagulate quicksilver, wine spirit, and other spirits in front of our machine by our fire of nature. You place quicksilver in an open glass capsule or on a dish in front of our machine. As soon as it senses the calcining fire and begins to smoke, you then successively throw in small pieces of sulfur. It receives the sulfurous heat and coagulates into the finest silver, from which you can produce several pounds daily. The wine spirit or other spirits should simply be cooked and fixed into salt, which no so-called chemist or alchemist will ever achieve through material fire that burns and consumes everything. All his efforts and works are and will be in vain. He will never produce anything good, as material fire is diametrically opposed to that of nature. Therefore, if you pay attention to our fire of nature, you will operate your fortune and happiness. The particular stone of the sages. We will continue under the auspices of God to describe what the particular stone of the sages is and how to make it. You see in our meteorological observations from whence the dew, vapors, and frost come, namely from the higher region and the universal spirit. All things are created through him and emerge from him. They are cast upon us by the common air and subsequently manifest as visible or comprehensible bodies. For example, in winter, we take the crystalline air, frozen and attached to trees and hedges. In spring and autumn, we collect the dew. We expose it in open glass capsules under our magical fire of nature and reduce it by cooking into an astral salt. Then we calcine it with a stronger degree of our fire until it becomes fixed and no longer smokes. We then apply the full heat of our fire, through which we melt it into a round, constellated, and vitrified stone that is full of the most beautiful colors and many other wonderful properties. Although this astral stone possesses great beauty and incredible virtues, it is far from being comparable to our universal stone. The former can be made into a particular tincture if it is remelted with an equal part of gold or silver as its ferment. The secret of secrets. Where truth is made comprehensible. What our previously mentioned Spiritus Mundi is, what its qualities and virtues are, we will briefly describe meteorically below. Know that no one can elaborate on the great mystery without knowledge of our spirit of the world and our magical philosophical fire of nature. We speak here of the great secret of all secrets, which began with divine and eternal virtues and will endure until the end of the ages. Therefore, all of you who ardently desire to engage in these divine matters, begin by making yourselves worthy of sharing in the Spirit of God, so that you may receive from Him the light of wisdom and His eternal grace. We thus say that Meteorica Minor is nothing other than Meteorica Sagax in its generation. From this philosophical chaos arise, in the upper region, the rains. But these rains do not reach us as rain, rather, they come as vapors, from which the dew emanates. All these things do not pour upon us with substance because they are spiritual. They also form thunder and lightning but do not strike our earth due to their great distance. Their species and parts spread throughout the upper element of air. It is then that they fall upon the globes, so that Sagax generates blood, metals, etc. Dragons, halos, apparitions, likenesses, figures, etc. All these things emanate from above when they come through the intermediate interstices. Sometimes, they are consumed and dispersed by the Meteorica Minora. Within this Meteorica Sagaci lies the dye of metals, gemstones, and other colors. From this Olympus emanate all the colors. In this Olympus resides Vulcanus Meteoricus, who is the generator of all colors, all dyes, etc. From Meteorica Sagax emerges the conjunction of dye in elemental bodies. Thus, the rains are born within this Meteorica through the cooking in the intermediate interstices. There lies the spirit of the world, which coagulates all the bodies of metals, those of precious and imperfect stones, etc. For from this spirit emanate the rays of the sun, which permeate all things, resulting in a creatum. This is therefore Sagax Meteorica and the true member of the sciences of the stars. It is also our true philosophical essence that we must collect during a time of beautiful warmth from the sun, when there is a clear, pure day that is not windy or cloudy. One will obtain this spirit in greater quantity and better quality, especially during hot and heavy times or in a sky where storms are to be expected. All this knowledge consists of great secrets and divine mysteries, and believe that if your spirit does not sense or understand them, God has not destined you for these works. In that case, it would be wise for you to renounce them and to confine yourself to following the state that is appropriate for you, to walk in the fear of God, and to finish your days in His honor and glory. Amen. Of the great lunar and cold fire. Having faithfully and clearly indicated in our previous divine arcanas all that concerns our solar machine, we will now address the great lunar fire and teach the truly divine miraculous virtues contained within it. No one is unaware that, by the will of the Creator, all created things exist in a perpetual correspondence between the two great luminaries, the solar and lunar, of nature, that they are maintained there by a sympathetic order that is ingrained in them, so that all tends to the glory of God and the benefit of man. The Creator has established such a disposition, such a permanent order in His works of nature, in all created beings and species, that nothing reaches its maturity and perfection before the time prescribed for it, unless one finds oneself in a position to assist nature through art. When we say, through art, we mean and refer to our solar and lunar machines. For without their help and means, everything would proceed in the natural order of things, and nothing could be produced before the prescribed term, nor improved and multiplied. For this reason, we instruct you once again on what our solar machine is and how, in just a few hours before this machine, one can bring all minerals, pearls, and others to their ultimate and highest perfection, converting them into precious stones whose value is impossible to assess. This will be elaborated further in the detailed experiments that follow. Operations with universal machines. All operations that one wishes to undertake with our universal machines must be carried out according to nature and in such an order that each species can rejoice in the nature of its kindred. This is so that all corporeal things return to their center, their first principle, and become ens primum, as they were in their beginning, without the destruction of their life bonds or roots, which we have already discussed in our divine arcanas. Therefore, we will present here some experiments on how to return all frozen waters, crystals, corals, pearls, mother of pearl, and generally all minerals and precious stones of any denomination and nature to their primary principles or raw materials using our lunar machine. We set up our machine and begin by exposing an ordinary crystal in a clean and suitable vessel for the operation, allowing the focal point to shine upon it. Then, this crystal, without much movement, will reduce and calcine into a very pure and white powder by its own innate cold fire, and this will happen within an hour. Next, we expose the said powder, thus calcined, under our main solar machine and apply the full focal point, then it will melt into an eternally fine vitrified stone. Thus, this will be a precious stone displaying many colors and resisting all tests. It does not melt in material fire, nor does it break or ever change its colors. We will discuss this further when we address the tinting of precious stones. Further operations with precious materials. The same operation is performed with corals. One begins by reducing them in front of our lunar machine, as indicated above for crystals. Then, they are melted in front of the solar machine. The result is a vitrified stone of a brilliant and noble red, which, when carried on one's person for health, is invaluable. This stone serves as an inconceivable amulet against all kinds of sorcery. The same method is applied to pearls. A good quantity is calcined in front of the lunar machine, reducing them to powder. Then, the powder is melted in front of the solar machine. Refer to what we have stated in our divine arcanas regarding this process. Similarly, one can calcine mother of pearl and plumosum alum. All these materials become precious stones that display all sorts of colors, and they are as beautiful as those that would be valued very highly, without anyone ever being able to guess what they were beforehand. Precious stones. Diamonds, emeralds, adamants, magnets, daisies, jacinths, sapphires, rubies, carbuncles, corals, chrysophages. It is a stone that radiates with fire in the night and merges with gold during the day. Calcine many small diamonds, as I have previously indicated to you, under our lunar machine. For without the application of its cold fire, you will achieve nothing with the diamond. Then, melt these calcined stones together in front of our solar machine, and you will have created a great stone, which is certainly a masterpiece of our art, for the stone is created anew without blemish. Carrying this stone will grant you honors and favors from the great. The emerald can be regenerated in the same way. It becomes brighter and more beautiful than it was before. It is a transparent green stone. It is good for the eyes and for memory when worn. It preserves chastity, and, more surprisingly, it breaks when this is transgressed. Adamant must be regenerated by the same method. This stone is also called diamond and onyx because it is harder, it brings joy. Magnus is a ferruginous stone. Once regenerated, it becomes so exalted in strength that if you bring a piece of iron close to it, you will no longer be able to detach it. It can hold many quintals of iron suspended in the air. When this stone is crushed between two stones to reduce it to powder, it has the virtue of stopping any diarrhea instantly, with just 1 grain. By projecting a grain of this stone onto 1,000 grains of molten tin, copper, or lead, everything converts into iron. The sulfur of this stone is auriferous and dyes into gold. Margarita is a white stone. It grows in shells. When regenerated, it possesses great virtues, so that men and animals love it and follow it. If you rub the beak of a bird with this stone, it will follow you for its entire life and will never leave you. Jacinth is a yellow stone. Regenerated by our 2 machines, its beauty will be exalted to the point of becoming invaluable. It has the virtue of protecting a man from all wild beasts. Lions and tigers can be tamed by it. The ruby acquires such a beautiful red during regeneration that it becomes priceless. Its sympathetic virtues bring friendship and make one agreeable to everyone. The carbuncle is the stone of the sun. It plays with light like the sun. When regenerated, its brilliance and light are increased well beyond double, so that it will illuminate a place day and night. This regenerated stone is invaluable. It comes closest to the philosopher's stone. It generally contains within it all the virtues of all other precious stones. It possesses both the superior and the inferior, that is, the celestial and the terrestrial. Chalcedony is a stone with many intertwined and murky colors that, during regeneration, becomes so bright and beautiful that one can regard it as a true wonder of the world. This stone solidifies and vitrifies, becoming compact and hard like a diamond. When worn, it serves as a protection against all diseases. Topaz is a stone that shines at night and emits a very great fire. When regenerated, it attracts such brilliance from the sun that it can be compared to the carbuncle. All specters retreat before its brightness, as do all those who dwell in darkness. Amethyst acquires a red, shining glow, intertwined with yellow during regeneration. It vitrifies very hard. Its sympathetic virtue makes you agreeable to everyone. Chrysoprase emerges from its regeneration infinitely bright and displays all colors in the greatest beauty. This stone acquires the virtue of extinguishing material fire. It indicates fair and foul weather. If worn, it warns of death. For a few days prior, it pales, becomes troubled, and finally, it breaks. That is enough about the perfection of precious stones. In their regeneration by our solar and lunar machines, and the two great luminaries of the world. On the transmutation of imperfect stones. We now impart to you a very great and important secret, knowing how to proceed to transform and dye imperfect stones to a very high degree, of which we have already mentioned in our divine secrets when speaking of Lumen Plumosum. The incombustible Lumen Plumosum cannot be altered by any material fire but rather by our two great luminaries of the nature of the world, for it contains within it the most fixed fire of nature. Thus, we take a Lumen Plumosum and calcine it in front of our lunar machine into a very pure and fine white powder. Then, we melt it in front of our solar machine so that it vitrifies. It will emerge from regeneration with a body so clarified and beautiful that nothing can be compared to its brilliance. It is the unique, the only material and the only fixed fire from which one can make a dye for all precious stones, as we have faithfully indicated in our divine secrets. Talc will present itself with almost the same beauty during regeneration. Note that it is important to observe that this material flows under the solar machine at the smallest fire into a whitish oil when it has been calcined in front of the lunar machine. We felt it necessary to make this observation because it is another way to make talc oil compared to what is indicated in our previous secrets. One can prepare a stone from common fountain water. Here's how: freeze the water in a vessel in front of our lunar machine so that it becomes ice. Then remove it from the lunar machine and place it back under the same machine, so that it is continually struck by the third degree of fire. Crystals will form. Then give these crystals the entire focus that will calcine them into a dry and white powder. This powder, when exposed under the solar machine, will flow like water and then coagulate into a clear, vitrified stone, which is barely distinguishable from a diamond, except that it does not have the same hardness. Know, therefore, that it must be assisted by the dye indicated above, and you will have completed the art of preparing common water into a diamond or other precious stone. Minerals and materials growing in the earth. Let us begin with the element of fire, which is nothing other than a living mine of sulfur. When this mine is exposed in front of our lunar machine, under the cold fire of nature, it alters and falls into a brilliant, crystalline powder, so that from its sulfurous kind, it acquires another kind due to the two fires of nature, one contrary to the other, like cold and hot. But then, exposing this powder under the solar machine, it melts immediately. By maintaining the fusion for a longer time, the sulfur vitrifies into a crystalline stone that seeps into metals and can operate very advantageously in particular ways. If you put this solidified sulfur with gold in fusion, the latter will be raised to such a high degree that it no longer appears to be gold. Then project it onto silver, and you will be richly rewarded. Mercury is regarded among mineral bodies as the element of water. It coagulates and fixes immediately by the lunar machine. Then, exposed under the solar machine, it promptly melts into a lunar body. Niter is the element of air. It falls into a white powder in front of the lunar machine and melts like water in front of the solar machine. It then becomes a vitrified stone of the highest fixity. Take serious note of this stone, and remember what we have said regarding it in our divine secrets. You will achieve a treasure that is impossible to value if you give it gold to ferment in front of our magical fire of nature. You will possess enough wealth and, similarly, health. We will not say more, this should suffice for you. We regard vitriol, rock salt, and common salt as the element of earth. When vitriol is subjected to philosophical calcination by our lunar machine and then melted by our magical solar fire of nature, it results in a beautiful red glass. Then, this glass is fermented with gold, and a dye is obtained that can tint more than 1,000 parts of silver into gold. We will also indicate how to derive greater benefit from all minerals and how to reproduce each of their primum ends. Know, therefore, beforehand that the three mineral principles are sulfur, mercury, and salt, in which the primum ends of metals is contained and found, which is the vivifying and growing spirit. Just as you find the primum ends of gold in the marcasites of garnets and in auriferous red talc, so too you find the primum ends of silver in white marcasites, in white talc, in orpiment, arsenic, and litharge. The primum ends of copper is found in cobalts, in zinc, in vitriol, in atramina, and in verdigris. The primum ends of tin is found in zwitting. That of lead is found in antimony and in minium. In cinnabar only is the primum ends of quicksilver. The primum ends is a volatile, growing, and vivifying spirit that rests in the mineral matrix until, through the passage of time and the influence of the seasons, it becomes a metallic and fixed body. Take note here and understand well that it is a living species that rests there in its tender spiritual youth. This is why we assert the impossibility of obtaining this spirit, or this primum ends, through the material fire of wood and coals, having observed sufficiently in our divine secrets that material fire destroys, consumes, and annihilates all life in living things. Therefore, do not stray outside. Act prudently with it and by it, and only treat these works with the vivifying fire of nature, from which they have taken their origin, and by which they have been created and nourished. We will therefore indicate to you the way to spiritually and bodily procure these living spirits by means of the two great lights of the world, with the help of our machines for the glory of God and for your benefit. We take one of the said mines, raw and fresh from its mineral root, and expose it under our lunar machine and the living light of nature to calcine it without destroying its vital spirits, thereby opening its matrix in which the primum ends rests. Then we confine this calcined material in a well-sealed alembic that we place in front of our solar machine and distill with very gentle heat from the sun. At this point, the living spirit will pass through the caput mortuum into the receiving vessel, appearing as a bluish water that remains continuously together without separating, similar to common mercury. But as soon as this spirit comes into contact with the air, it suddenly returns to its chaos. This is why it must be quickly confined in a philosophical vessel, which secret that retains it and must be joined to it is nothing other than gold, silver, or another virgin metal that has not yet been felt or purified by material fire, but one that has been taken directly from the mines. This is the true philosophical vessel of the said spirit, in which it rejoices, contains itself, and incorporates. We observe to you that nothing else can be done with this primum ends of minerals than to create the golden tree known as the philosophical tree, which grows continuously. Here is the process. Take 2 parts of gold or virgin silver and 1 part of the aforementioned living mineral spirit, which we also call our philosophical mercury. Combine them in a large and beautiful glass cylinder. Seal it well and place the whole thing in a temperate location. Leave it there undisturbed. In 2 or 3 months, it will grow branches of gold or silver that will rise like coral branches. After this time, give it nourishment again with our philosophical mercury. Then allow it to rest for as long as before. Repeat this nourishment up to 3 times. In the end, the tree will grow so that it fills the glass with many beautiful and small twigs. It will simultaneously acquire a true root. It has then become the true philosophical tree of gold or silver that produces its virgin gold or silver month by month and will yield a rich harvest. You will remove it with a small pair of tweezers for your use as follows. Weigh and note exactly the weight of the gold twigs you have detached so that you can nourish this philosophical tree again with an equal weight of philosophical mercury. In this way, you will maintain an eternal harvest and a rich income without costs and without much effort. Consider this work in all its aspects and agree that it is a true transplantation in its living roots, following divine order. In quality, nature acts through the magnetic spirit it possesses, seeking to multiply and reproduce its likeness with virgin parts, to the glory of God and for the good of man. Anyone who would claim to achieve the same results with common mercury or cinnabar, or with gold or silver purified by material fire is a falsifier of the virtues of nature and will be unable to undertake anything in our works. To demonstrate the greatest virtues of this virgin gold that has never experienced material fire, you need only take this virgin gold, melt it with our solar machine, and maintain the fusion until it is vitrified into a beautiful scarlet glass. Then give it a ferment of gold of equal weight to create a dye that, although particular, dyes much more than a dye made from common gold, as we have already mentioned in our divine secrets. Wearing this virgin gold, it serves as an incredible fortifier of the heart and a singular preservative against all infectious air and other diseases. Let us also observe that no one should presume to claim they can produce the philosopher's stone by common fire, or the universal dye from such a primum ens of minerals. For the philosopher's stone derives from a whole different center and a whole different substance than the mineral kingdom. Every species or kind carries its particular seed. This is why all created things must remain in the order that the Creator has infused into them. Each thing will eternally produce its like, provided that one knows how to assist nature through nature itself. This knowledge is a particular light that God grants us, and it can only be executed with the help of the two great luminaries, through their astral influence and by the application of our solar and lunar machines. We therefore tell you here to take the said living spirit, that is, the said ens mineralium, to reduce it by cooking in an open vessel until it becomes a dry salt in front of our solar and living fire of nature. Then cook it again until it becomes a red stone like the most beautiful vitrified and fixed ruby. From this, you will obtain a dye that can always be increased by a ferment and that will never end. But despite all this, it is far from being a universal dye, because it has not been taken from the universal root. Finally, in concluding our present divine secrets, we charge the conscience of anyone who comes into contact with this not to abuse it and thus finish all these elementary things that are temporal and will be consumed at the end of days, whereas we, as human creatures, provided that we are just and have lived in the fear of God, will be clarified in God, entering into eternal bliss to praise and glorify God, from century to century. Amen. We will also add to the present some curious procedures to be executed by the lunar machine. Namely, a pleasant fishing method. If there are many fish in a deep pond, or even one that is almost bottomless and difficult to fish, one need only set up our lunar machine on a small boat in the spot where the water is deepest. A focus is given on the water, only as large as a shield. This will create a great glow and cause all the fish to rise to the surface. Then the focus is given in its full magnitude. The fish, by this means, will be greatly dazzled, so that they can be caught by hand or with suitable instruments. Another secret. Calcine some vitriol using the lunar machine. It turns a beautiful white and falls into powder. This is the true antipathic powder that is used in various diseases. The antipathic swallow powder is prepared in the same way. By freezing and numbing a bat using the lunar machine, the operation will be complete. However, it is better to do this on a Sunday, as bats are supremely saturnine. With this powder, one can destroy enchantments, but it can also be used to cast spells, whether good or evil. Another. When the moon is full, one can place a large mirror in front of the lunar machine, but not too close so that it doesn't break. In the mirror, you will see the full moon, stars, landscapes, mountains, valleys, water, fire, and within the fire, thousands and thousands of hideous figures moving faster than one another. Their gaze causes a frightening sight. The darkness can be observed exceptionally well. Curious establishment for a crawfish bed, by which they multiply greatly and become large and fat, and from such a pond, neither crawfish nor fish can escape, even if a stream of running water passes through the middle. Make a pond as large as you desire. Have it walled all around with large bricks. Place large beams of aranholes, field maple, Acer campestre, in the ground in the middle of the pond. Crawfish particularly like this type of wood. Plant a herb called Diebstokel in German all around the pond. This herb develops large roots that extend toward the water as it grows. Crawfish eat this and become very lustful, multiplying in no time by the thousands. A small stream of running water should pass through the pond to keep the water fresh where the stream enters and exits. Place some eagle stones on both sides of the entrance and exit of the passage, as the eagle stone is antipathic to all aquatic species. Upon reaching the passage, they will retreat. After placing crawfish in the pond as desired and they have multiplied, they should be fed as follows. For example, if you have placed 300 crawfish, throw at least 1 pound of fresh cheese in small pieces into the pond once a month, along with 2 or 3 boiled eggs cut into quarters. Occasionally, also toss in some raw liver. With this food, the crawfish grow and fatten significantly. Their taste becomes exquisite. Establishment of a water bed, by which many springs can be gathered and increased. Take 1 pound of true lodestone and half a pound of alum. Heat the lodestone until it glows red 2 to 3 times, quenching it in vinegar each time. The stone will become brittle and friable. Grind it into powder, then calcine the alum in a clay pot until it becomes brown. Grind it into powder and mix these two substances. Moisten them with ordinary water. Form large balls about the size of a florin, a small coin. Dry them in the sun. Once dry, place them in a blast furnace or in front of a blacksmith's fire to heat them thoroughly. Allow them to cool. The water bed will thus be prepared. Note that if your 2 pounds of lodestone and alum do not bind well to form balls, a little potter's clay can be mixed in to help them stick together. If you want to increase the waters and bring together some springs so they can flow through light cavities they will form themselves, you must carefully examine the ground where the springs are located, which should be 50 to 60 feet apart. Then, first target the weakest spring by driving a strong iron rod into the center of the spring hole, to a depth of 3 feet or more, depending on the ground. Afterward, drop one of the above balls into the hole made by the iron rod and leave it undisturbed. The ball will create an opening in a few days. The water will rise and flow through a stream it forms itself, which will increase more and more. It is important to note that this operation should always be undertaken during the waxing phase of the moon, as all waters increase or decrease with the moon. End of the Divine Arcanes.